Now, in the case we cause injury to another person, a car accident, for example, medical bills may not be the only damages we're responsible for. The cost can climb quickly, and that is where a personal umbrella policy can be very, very valuable. Welcome to the How Insurance Works podcast. If we have not yet met here, my name is Mike McGilvery. I'm a second-generation licensed property and casualty insurance broker and agent at Shaw, Moses, Mendenhall & Associates in Southern California. My goal is to simply help educate and inform on various aspects of insurance and the insurance industry. The content in this podcast should not be considered insurance advice and is for general informational purposes only. Insurance forms and endorsements vary based on insurance company, changes in addition dates, regulations, court decisions, and state jurisdiction, so please consult with your agent for further advice. Now, the topic on today's podcast is personal umbrella insurance. What is personal umbrella insurance, and should you consider it? And part of what we've been talking with clients about a lot lately is there is an element with personal umbrella policies that can protect them in the environment of COVID-19. Should somebody accuse someone else of giving them COVID-19, there is a way personal umbrellas can help. I'm going to follow up with that in a next podcast that'll be coming out next week. But for today, I wanted to simply explain what personal umbrellas are. Now, I'd like to encourage you to watch this also on our howinsurancworks.co website, www.howinsurancworks.co. You can watch the video of this podcast. I'm going to have an actual video that is playing along with pictures and images that hopefully help drive some of these concepts home. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in seeing that and seeing the video of the podcast, please tune in at www.howinsurancworks.co. So today on the podcast, we're going to talk about a few different things. Number one, what exactly is personal umbrella insurance? Number two, we're going to examine a real life story on where personal umbrella insurance can be extremely valuable. Number three, the costs of personal umbrella insurance. Number four, what do insurance companies consider when they're pricing these out for you and giving you quotes? And number five, should you own a personal umbrella policy? So let's start with what exactly is personal umbrella insurance? Well, this is simply extra liability insurance coverage that goes beyond the limits of what you might have in your regular homeowner's policy, your regular auto policy, or your boat, RV, or motorcycle policy. This umbrella adds an extra layer of security to those who are at risk for being sued for damages to other people's property or injuries caused to others in an accident. Now, in most cases, that's most of us. Accidents can happen, and we could be responsible. Now, there's an illustration when you hear about umbrellas. There's a little umbrella over a home or an umbrella over a car. That's a very good illustration explaining exactly what personal umbrellas are. They're providing an extra layer of protection over what you already have. Now, umbrellas will also further protect you against libel, vandalism, slander, invasion of privacy. And some umbrella policies, this is important, provide worldwide coverage while you're traveling. Now, your underlying policies do not do that. So that is an advantage of umbrella policies. So when are umbrellas particularly helpful? Well, I want to give you an example. Now, these are current clients of ours now. This is a situation that happened several years ago before they became clients, but I want to use a story to illustrate where personal umbrellas can be extremely valuable. And I'd like to introduce you to Steve and Diane. Names changed, of course, but Steve and Diane are very successful. They are nearing retirement, and they've built up a nice net worth for themselves, a nice portfolio with a lot of hard work. In that portfolio, they have a home in San Dimas. San Dimas is a suburb of Los Angeles that is worth $795,000. They have a vacation home in Palm Springs that is worth $308,000 rather. They have a 4-unit apartment building that's been in the family for quite some time, valued at $569,000. And they have non-qualified investments of about $500,000. Now, we're not talking about 401k or IRA assets. These are non-qualified investments they have in the stock market of about $500,000. Now, if we take all of that and add it together, we're going to be able to ascertain approximately Steve and Diane's net worth. So again, we have the home in San Dimas, $795,000. We have the Palm Springs condo, $308,000. We have the 4-unit apartment building in Los Angeles, $569,000. And we have the non-qualified investments of $500,000. Now, when we add all this up together, Steve and Diane have a net worth of about $2,172,000. They've done very well for themselves. You may very well know many people just like Steve and Diane. But how do we protect this net worth if something bad happens? And that something may be something innocuous. It may be an accident, and that is certainly what happened in this situation. Steve was making a run to the grocery store just to pick up a couple items and was about to pull into the grocery store parking lot. He was going to make a left-hand turn. He was in the middle of an intersection. There was a truck in front of Steve that Steve could not see around. And Steve was deciding, should I make the left-hand turn? Should I not? Now, the lights were green. There was another car approaching Steve's car that he couldn't see because that car was farther back behind the truck. Steve decided to take the left-hand turn, and that car that had the right-of-way slammed into Steve. There were two passengers in that car. Both were taken to the hospital. One, the driver, in serious condition. Now, of course, this is an awful accident. It's unfortunate. But Steve was simply making a left-hand turn when he thought he was clear. This is something that could happen to a lot of us. But we had two passengers in that car injured. So what damages could Steve be responsible for? Well, medical bills, of course, that could be substantial, and it was for the driver, very, very substantial. But there are other damages that we may be responsible for that we need to think about. And these are some damages that people don't always think about. Lost wages for the passengers in the car. If they're unable to go back to work or to work, we have to maybe be responsible. We may have to pay for those lost wages. We have to think about loss of future earnings for both passengers. If somebody in a car is paralyzed or disabled and can't go back to work, we have to think about the loss of future earnings. We may be responsible for those damages. We have to think about Steve's legal costs for defense, especially if this is a protracted lawsuit. Now, of course, that'll be paid by the insurance company, but only for the limits that Steve has in liability. And of course, pain and suffering, restitution, and punitive damages all could be levied against Steve here as damages. So it's not just the medical bills. There's a lot of other things that go along with the damages. Now, what the attorney of the passengers in that car might say is, well, how much does Steve have? What can we really sue him for? And through the discovery process, they're going to discover he's worth $2,172,000. So the way we have to look at this is the attorneys on the other side are going to see how much is Steve's net worth and what can we sue him for. It's not always just the medical expenses. So we have to examine how much liability insurance do Steve and Diane have currently. Well, they have $300,000 in liability for their home in San Dimas, $300,000 in liability insurance and their home in Palm Springs. They have $300,000 in liability in their 4-unit apartment complex in Los Angeles, and they have their auto insurance. Now, their auto insurance, they have split limits, and I'll explain that in a second. You very well may have split limits in your policy. They have split limits of $100,000, $300,000, and $100,000. But what we can't do is take all of the liability insurance Steve owns, put them together, and put them toward this particular incident. Because this was an auto accident, the only policy of Steve and Diane's that is going to respond is his auto insurance policy. We can forget all of the other liability insurance. We have to only focus on what he has for liability limits in his auto insurance. So let's take a quick look at that. Now, Steve carries split auto limits. And what those split limits are is $100,000, $300,000, and $100,000. You may have the exact same limits in your policy. Let me explain exactly what those limits are for. The first limit of $100,000, that is the most Steve's insurance company will pay per person per accident. The $300,000 in the middle, that is the maximum Steve's insurance company will pay in any given one accident. And the last $100,000 is the most Steve's insurance company will pay for property damage done to somebody else's car. But a lot of times the $300,000 in the middle gets confused. We think, well, that's $300,000 for one accident total, and it's not. And in this case, Steve doesn't have $300,000 that can go to these two passengers in the car. His policy pays $100,000 per person per accident, which means Steve has $100,000 to go to passenger one and $100,000 to go to passenger two. Not $300,000, $200,000, $100,000 per person per accident. Now, the driver of that car ended up being hospitalized for 3 months due to spinal surgery. It was a protracted lawsuit. Now, let's go back to the damages that Steve might be responsible for. Yes, we had substantial medical bills. We had lost wages for both passengers in the car. We had a loss of future earnings for the driver. We had Steve's legal costs, and we did have some punitive damages and restitution. With his assets considered, the attorneys for the passengers in the car decided to sue Steve for $1.5 million. And all Steve had was $100,000 for each person. Now, it was the attorney of the driver of the car that sued for the $1.5 million, and all Steve had was $100,000 in liability insurance. He was on the hook now for $1.4 million if the whole $1.5 million was awarded. That is a lot of money to have to pay out of pocket. That's a lot of money to be on the hook for. Now, if Steve had a $1 million or even a $2 million umbrella over those auto limits, he would have the peace of mind there, and rest assured he wouldn't most likely have to pay anything out of pocket. And they did settle not for the 1.5, but a lot more than the 100,000. So Steve was out of pocket quite a bit on this one. Now, had he had a personal umbrella, that is where it can be extremely valuable. Now, of course, a lot of people ask, well, but aren't these expensive policies? No, they are one of the most cost-effective policies to own. A $1 million umbrella can cost as low as $300 a year or $1 per day. Now, of course, costs vary. And there are certain things that underwriters look at when they're quoting an umbrella for you. So costs can be anywhere from $300 to $1,000, but they can be as low as $300. And what they'll look at is, what's your line of work? You know, how risky are you? Are you more likely to be involved in accidents? They'll look at your driving record. Have you had any accidents in the last 5 years? What type of hobbies are you engaged in? Do you own a boat, a motorcycle? What underlying insurance limits do you carry? Do you own any pets? Any aggressive breeds of dogs that might bite somebody else as you're walking them around? Have you been involved in previous lawsuits? So these are all things that they will look at, and this is why the prices with personal umbrellas can vary. But again, they are very, very cost-effective regardless. Now, should you own umbrella policies? Well, the question there is, if you have assets and a net worth that warrants an umbrella, it's something you certainly may want to look into. And this can be anybody, a landlord that owns property. If you serve on the board of a nonprofit company, remember libel, slander, defamation. If you're engaged in volunteer activity, if you post reviews of products or businesses online or otherwise, again, libel, slander, defamation there. Do you participate in sports where you can easily injure other people? Do you travel abroad a lot? Remember, your underlying policies aren't going to cover you when you're out of the country, but some umbrella policies do. So all things to think about. Now, if you make a decision that you'd like a personal umbrella and feel that it would be beneficial to you, the question we get a lot is, well, how much should I own? Well, in general, the insurance industry will recommend have an umbrella that's at least equal to your net worth or perhaps $1 million over that. But of course, it's your decision whether it's 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million. But that's a good general rule of thumb. Again, talk with your agent about that a little bit more. Now, a couple other considerations. Understand that your underlying insurance limits matter, and some umbrella carriers do have requirements. There are some umbrella carriers that will require you to have auto limits of $250,000 and $500,000. So just keep that in mind. You may have to go out to different umbrella carriers. It is a good idea to try to buy an umbrella from the same company you have your underlying limits with, because they often provide you discounts and credits for doing that. And certain carriers do offer, again, umbrellas that provide worldwide protection, which can be very important. If you travel abroad a lot, of course, we have to get through COVID-19, but if you travel abroad a lot, your umbrella, and there are some companies that provide worldwide coverage, will provide you that liability insurance. So again, in Steve's situation, had he had a $1 or $2 million umbrella, that certainly would have prevented him from paying out of pocket for this. Again, they did settle for less than the 1.5, but it was a substantial amount and well over the $100,000 that he had available in his auto insurance. So I hope that podcast is helpful. For any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me directly at mikemac@howinsuranceworks.co. That's mikemac@howinsuranceworks.co. To follow up with this, we're going to talk about some of the considerations of personal umbrella policies and how they relate to COVID-19. That'll be on next week's podcast. Until then, stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.